The first and the fastest. Racing around the world alone. We take a close look at the extraordinary solo sailors. Plus, it's showtime. A new direction for a big name. And as always, plenty in Dock Talk. But first. In the build-up to the start of the Arkea Ultim Challenge, there was an elephant in the room. A question that plenty were thinking, but no one really wanted to ask. How many of the 6 solo skippers aboard their 32-metre trimarans would make it around the world in this brand new race? 22,000 miles alone on a giant runaway bus. Well, now we know, all bar one. For all 5 skippers and their teams, it's an incredible achievement, and irrespective of the results, it's an indication of just how far modern designs for giant multi-hulls has come. Robin Knox-Johnston won the first solo race around the world in 1969, the Golden Globe race. His trip took him 312 days, but the time didn't matter. Being the first to lap the planet non-stop, alone, under sail, did. In 1993, Sir Robin and a crew of 7 aboard Enza set out to be the first and fastest around the world in a catamaran. It had never been done before, and there was plenty of uneasy speculation as to whether it was even possible. A collision in the Indian Ocean forced them to retire.
We hit something hard with the starboard hull, rattling along here, and the impact damage has been quite extensive.
Meanwhile, Bruno Peron and his crew, who'd started on the same day, beat them to it and set the reference time of 79 days. But in 1994, Enza set a new record at 74 days and were the second cat to lap the planet. So with that in mind, he's just the person to ask about the latest solo achievements. Robin, lovely to see you again, and particularly on Suhaili. That's such a special boat.
My little boat, yeah.
When we look at Suhaili and think about the Golden Globe race back in 1969, and then look at the Arkea Ultim Challenge, another solo race, I mean, the difference couldn't be more marked between them. But then maybe the races aren't that different. They were both sort of firsts of their kind. I mean, what's your view on it?
I think the pressure's different. In my case, really, it was more a question of survival and just keeping going, not knowing what happened when we tried to double the distance anyone had ever sailed a boat, which is what we were doing. I mean, Chichester made the longest voyage up to then. He stopped in Australia. We're now saying we're going to go double that distance. And part of the problem was, of course, an awful lot of people didn't think that was possible. And you had to sort of say, well, I think it might be possible. I'm going to have a try at it. The difference was, one, I'm going to be at sea for a hell of a lot longer, I reckon 300 days. And you had to take food, stores, everything you needed. There was no contact. You had contact once a week, if you were lucky. And once the radio broke, it didn't even have that. These days, the machines are awesome. I mean, they really are. I mean, the Ultim, I think, was something just waiting to happen.
And yet one of the things that comes across with quite a lot of the skippers is the sense of the stress that they carry with them. I guess, because I always think of it as a bit like being on a giant runaway bus going around the world, that it's fine when it's working well, but if something small breaks and sets a chain reaction, then the scale of what you've got. And I just wonder whether that stress is what's behind it. And did you feel stress when you were going around, or was it a different emotion?
I can see why they're stressed. When they're on those massive machines with all that power and the speeds they were doing, that would be something that would leave you on edge, wouldn't it? I was never under that sort of pressure. My pressure was totally different. It was surviving the really big waves, which to them, they could just swim through. So there was a different pressure for me. I had to deal with big waves, big for my boat. They're big enough to outrun them. And so their stress was really, at what point do I ease up? because I'm going so fast with this machine, with the size of these waves, the way they're bashing and everything else. I think if I was doing an Ultim, I'd be stressed.
Now, jumping forward from there, you did an extraordinary trip around the world for the Jules Verne in '94, wasn't it?
94, yeah.
And you were the second multi-hull to have gone around non-stop. That was fully crewed, but it was very different. That was the early days of multi-hulls around the world, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people thought, me included actually at the time, thinking, I'm not even sure this is possible.
We had confidence in our boat. We had a very good crew, a very experienced crew, and we felt between us we could get this boat around the world, provided we didn't hit something, to be honest with you. We felt confident of doing it. And I don't think Peter and I had any doubts about that. I don't think the question of we can't do this ever crossed our minds. It was, we can do this providing we don't get an accident, which in the first time we did. So we were pressure, yes. You know, when you're at night in the roaring 40s, hitting 30 knots, and you can't see a thing because it's absolutely black. And you just think, really? This is ridiculous. We're just crashing on, flat out. And, you know, we haven't a clue what's in front of us. We can't see. But it was a different game. We were out to get that record, and we wanted it. And that was always top of our thinking. You know, we had a schedule I'd worked out of how many miles we must cover each day, how are we doing against that schedule, and if we're falling behind, we got worried, so we try and catch up. And we had certain simple rules, you know, normally 27 knots we put a reef in, because we're not going to break the boat. We never really sailed her at 100%, and that was a decision we made. We'll always just keep a little bit back from putting her under extreme pressure, because we've got to get round.
Do you look back on the Enza era? I mean, not just about the Enza era, because the Cats were of a similar style back then.
Yes, they were.
Do you look back on that and go, yeah, we got away with that, when you look at it in the context of what's available now?
No, I don't think we got away with it. I think we had a good boat. She was structurally strong. For her time, she was very strong. She was well thought through, and I don't think we sailed thinking, you know, oh dear, something's going to go wrong. We didn't think that way. We thought, only thing can go wrong is we don't go fast enough. We had confidence in our boat.
And I guess at the end of the day, in that era, she was state of the art back then. So you only know what you know at the time, don't you?
Well, that's right. Yeah, and you know, we held the record for 3 years. Jules Verne. You know, we're still the only non-French to have ever won it. It's amazing.
I saw some interesting commentary the other day that said if you took all the record passages that make up that trip around the world and took all those record passages together, you end up with a time of 34 days. Do you think that's possible?
Yes, because I think the current record holder didn't have foils.
Right.
And I think that will be the next thing. The Jules Verne will be, someone else will beat the current record, as you say, about 40 days, because they've got foils and they can never go faster. And of course, with a bigger crew, you can manage the boat better because, you know, a single hand has got to sleep sometime. And you sleep uneasily, I suspect, in those Ultims.
Only for 10 minutes, though.
Yes, probably. Well, I've never believed in that because I don't think you get enough rest. But I think, you know, if you've got a full crew with foils, that record's going to come tumbling. Well, you think about it. I mean, here we are, 30 years on from Enza, and the speed's doubled. Yeah. We were 14.8 knots average. Well, 40 days is 28 knots average. Average. Not just occasional spurts. The average speed is 28 knots. You just think, wow.
At the other end of the scale, we've just seen the end of the Global Solo Challenge, which was a sort of, it was a round the world solo race, which sort of probably escaped a lot of people's attention because it was very much an amateur thing, wasn't it? And the thing that came across, I think, from watching the finishes was the spirit of this race is very much amateur, pioneers. Yeah. You followed that race, I presume?
I did follow it. I followed it for really the reason you've just mentioned. This didn't require billions or millions. You know, more or less anyone could enter within their regulations. None of these boats are horrendously expensive. And therefore, it's made this event to go around the world solo non-stop much more accessible. And I've always been in favour of making sailing accessible. So in that respect, I strongly supported it.
Philippe Delamere won, didn't he? He won, but his very impressive achievement got rather overshadowed by Cole Brauer, the young 29-year-old American lady who sailed around in the class 40. I thought that was an extraordinary, I mean, quite rightly, she's attracted huge amounts of attention. What do you think about her achievement?
Well, she has, and deservedly so, in my view. I mean, I think it's a brilliant achievement. It's going to do an awful lot to encourage other young ladies to take up house sport. And the more publicity she gets for the sport, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
She did it in a class 40,
yeah.
Which I hesitate to say is a small boat because we're sitting on Suhaili, which is actually smaller. But, I mean, quite extraordinary doing it in a class. I know class 40s have been around the world before, but to the best of my knowledge, not non-stop.
No, and I think that's right, Matt. I don't know of anyone else who's gone around non-stop. No. Not a class 40, not the modern class 40. 40-footers, yes, but not the modern class 40. No, I think that's absolutely right. Fascinating
stuff. Finally, I want to ask you, I mean, you've probably been asked this before, but wind yourself back, I don't know, however many years you want to wind yourself back to your, I hesitate to say this because you're still very fit and very active, but to your fittest state. Back then, knowing what you know now about the technology that's around, the boats that are available, what would you choose to go around the world? If you were doing it on your own, what would you choose to go around the world in? Oh, come on. If I'd been, I was 30 when I got back from around the world. I was very fit, very strong, and absolutely, they caught me at the right age. I'd love an Ultim, wouldn't you? I mean, I'd have gone for that Ultim race, without a doubt. Blow the stress. I want to try and sail at those speeds against really good competition. And that was the great point. There was good competition. Okay, the winner in the end won by a bit of a margin, but that's after delaying for 2 days. I mean, we could have done it in 48 days, if you think about it. And bear in mind, too, the Ultims all had to start at a set time, whereas if you're doing the Jules Verne, you start when the weather suits you. So they had a slight disadvantage, which is why Joyon, who holds the record at the moment, did it in 42 days, but he could pick that slingshot down the Atlantic to start with. But I think they did brilliantly, those sailors, and I'd have loved to have been mixing it with them. Funny enough, I thought you'd say that. Robin, as always, brilliant to talk to you. Thanks so much for your views. Cheers.
My pleasure.
In the last episode, when we were talking about the Arkea Ultim Challenge, we had Caffari describe what had been going on and set the scene for us. Well, I'm very pleased that having dashed around the Caribbean, she's now back with us. She's probably regretting it because it's cold and it's wet again.
It's definitely not Caribbean weather here, that's for
not,
sure.
Anyway, it's lovely to have you back. We'll talk a little bit about how you got on out there. I presume it was a good trip.
It was excellent, yeah. The Caribbean 600 as a course is such a good training platform. Lots of corners, lots of action, lots of sail changes, every point of sail, and it really brought our development on in leaps and bounds. And it was noted by the other crews, which was, you know, I think testament to how hard we worked and the job that the coaches did with us.
Yeah, it's a harder course than people think, isn't it? Because it's just no time to rest at all on that course.
Well, on a mod 70 as well, everything comes up, the corners come up very quickly. So the only rest we had was the long leg from St Bart's down to Guadeloupe, which was 9 hours. So we all got a bit of rest in that time, but otherwise it was all action stations the whole time, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, great. Well, I was very envious. Now, talking about this Arkea Ultim Challenge, last time we spoke, Charles Caudrelier on Gitana 17 was midway up the Atlantic, I think, wasn't he? Fill us in on what happened after that.
So at that stage, he hadn't stopped. He was the only competitor that hadn't taken a pit stop to address any issues. We didn't really know what was wrong with his boat, what state his boat was in, how he was doing. We do know that he took 47 days of food, and now he has finished. We know it took him 50 days.
Bon, ce matin, les nouvelles sont bonnes, la météo est bonne. On a du vent et puis par contre, je réalise qu'on est déjà au 37e ou 38e jour. Il me reste encore 10 jours. Et on avait pris que 45 jours de bouffe. Donc, heureusement, il reste, je sais pas tout manger. Ce matin, c'est l'inventaire de ce qui reste comme nourriture. Je sais qu'il y en a qui sont partis avec moi. Je sais que Thomas est parti avec 42 jours, donc je suis pas le plus à plaindre. Voilà, on va faire l'inventaire de tout ça et il y a de quoi, ça va aller. Et puis ça glisse, on continue comme ça.
So he did end up stopping, and he stopped in the Azores, and he stopped to let a big depression go through because it wasn't worth the risk. The next competitor behind him wasn't a threat, so he took the sensible decision. And we often spoke in the last conversation we had about learning to go slow is just as important sometimes as learning to go fast. He took the stop, and actually Sam Davis's mum and dad were on site, and they took him for dinner, and he was worried about having English cooking, but actually he said it was the best steak and chips he'd had in a long time, and I can imagine after being at sea for that long it was very welcome. And then he slowed down actually on his approach to the finish so he could arrive at daylight rather than in the middle of the night. As we said, there was no threat. He took 50 days, he had his 50th birthday, and in the last 10 years I think he's ticked off a lot of wins, right from the Solitaire de Figaro, Route de Rome, Ocean Race, and now here we are. 2014 was the Ocean Race's first round the world, and now here we are on Ultim single-handed around the world, and his boat looked a bit battered and bruised at the end.
It did, didn't it? Yeah, it was missing a great big part of the fairing, but that happened early on in the race, didn't it?
Yes, and it's amazing when you start to see the state of the boats as they finish, actually how early some of these issues had and how they nursed them round and got them to the finish. So with that experience now, you know, that's probably the best solo round the world he's ever going to do. He said that he missed out on a Vendée Globe, but I don't think he needs to worry about that now. He's done it on a multi-hull and, you know, such a phenomenal time. But he's already got his new boat in development, and that will go into build. So it's exciting times for Charles Caudrelier.
Indeed. I mean, it was an extraordinary performance, and it was an extraordinary performance of all of those that finished, wasn't it? All five out of six of them that finished. But it was unconventional in a way, wasn't it? Because they all stopped at some point. What do you think the feeling is in the community, in the race community, and in the?
I think people doubted if these boats could get around the world. So one, we have proved that, but actually what enabled them to keep racing was that ability to have a pit stop.
But it doesn't detract from their achievement, does it?
I don't think it detracts from it at all. I mean, the stresses those guys are under. I think it was Anthony Marchand said at the end that for 2 months he lived with an alarm going off every 5 minutes. You know, the stress is undeniable, and you saw it on all their faces when they finished, of just that utter relief of, I am not living on the edge, I am not under that kind of pressure anymore, and I can just relax and be looked after by somebody else for a bit.
I was reading some of the quotes of the skippers as they finished. The one that made me smile the most with Charles, anyway. Charles is famously coy about saying anything, isn't he? He's a lovely guy, but he's deadpan. You get very little out of him. But in an interview I was reading that he said that his biggest concern is seasickness. He gets terribly seasick, and he'd far prefer it to be flat calm, which is a bit strange.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that from somebody who's achieved so much and at such a high level. But what he's done is learnt to manage it, and he knows how to manage himself in those conditions. But I would also guess that at 30 knots average of that kind of intensity, you have a lot more things to worry about than seasickness.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Takes your mind off it. Next in was Thomas Coville, wasn't it, on Sodebo?
And that was a real emotional finish. One, he'd always been third. He'd always been in there, but not quite. I think the hope was that Banque Populaire was going to be the big competition, and Armel had some issues and had to stop a couple of times. That allowed Thomas to come through in the Atlantic on the way up. 53 days, so not that long after Charles Caudrelier. Very emotional at the finish, and I just think he knew how much it had taken to make that happen. And he's very elaborate when he explains and describes what's going on, and you know, he thinks that they've all been gifted this opportunity to get around the world. You know, they were allowed to get round, and for somebody who's done 9 laps around the world, 7 of them in a multi-hull, 5 of them single-handed, I mean, the guy's a legend.
It is incredible, isn't it? And he does, as you say, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and yeah, it's quite extraordinary. I guess he would have been quite relieved too, because that's a brand new, well, I say brand new boat. It's a couple of years old, that boat, but it's one of the latest generation, and it's quite radical, isn't it, compared to the others?
Very different. I mean, for him, he sails, and most of us look forward with our mast and our mainsail kind of ahead of us. He's actually got it sat behind. His cockpit area, or his working area, is in front of the mast, which is really different and unusual, but he's showing that it works for him.
Yeah, it's taken a while for that boat to sort of find its feet, isn't it? Because they've had some gear problems and all kinds of other issues. But no, it's great to see him finish second. So behind him, Armel Leclerc, Banque Populaire. He was the hot favourite at the beginning, wasn't he? But it didn't go so well for him early on.
No, he had the first pit stop and he went into Recife, and everybody was shocked at that, and then that started the conversation of, oh, can these boats even get round?
Avec ce bateau, pour deux raisons techniques. La première, c'est d'abord il y a eu un problème sur le gennaker. En fait, la voile s'est décrochée de l'avant et en fait, elle est venue arracher le balcon avant.
And what happened then when he left, Charles Caudrelier and Tom Lepech on SVR had actually got ahead in the weather systems, and he couldn't close that gap. And he battled round, and actually what happened then is he had his own little battle with Sodebo in the south, especially when Sodebo finished. They were super close in the Indian Ocean, but he then had to stop again in Rio on the way back up the Atlantic to address some issues again. And he waited a long time to make that stop. That was a difficult call for him. He lost his float rudder, and then he lost his main rudder, which then said, oh, I've got to stop and sort these out. So it just goes to show that with three rudders, you got a little bit of leeway there. It was really good for my confidence now I'm sailing multi-hulls to know that it's okay. You don't need all three all the time.
He lost his main rudder, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was one of the main issues that made him go in and stop.
As in lost the, he didn't lost the whole blade?
No, just damage that meant it wasn't working.
That would freak me out on a 100-foot try, but there we go.
Yeah, well, my experience transatlantic this year with the famous project, we actually hit something and our middle rudder kicked up, and actually the boat was still sailing, but I was nervous. The boat was fine, but I was nervous, so I automatically slowed down. But it was a good lesson to learn that you can sail without it down.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So they were the three front runners with the smartest, newest boats. They had two more finishers. What happened there?
So the next two were in their own little battle, less experience and slightly older boats. And it was Anthony Marchand, and he had Actuel, and he was the one that he had to stop as well. He stopped in Cape Town and nursed his boat. He actually didn't have any foils from Cape Town onwards. And the one comment he made was the boats are super uncomfortable without foils. So he had quite a miserable ride round, but he said that this whole lap was about practice for the next one. So he's really got the bite, you know, the zest for it, and knows he can do a better job. And I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah. And then coming up in fifth?
Fifth was Eric Peron on what was an old boat, the only non-foiler in the group. So he was on Adagio, which was the former Actuel, which was the former Sodebo, which was the former Geronimo. So it goes back a lot of times. The boat's seen a lot of miles, and each time it's had a refit and been modernised. But he wasn't foiling, and his comment at the finish was, I can see why the others foil. 66 days around the world. I mean, for me, I would comment and say that's still pretty quick. He found that quite a long time, but you know, what an amazing achievement. He wasn't that far behind. He did have to stop and make repairs, but so did everybody else. He's finished in 66 days, just a couple of days behind fourth place. So, you know, fair play. Getting round single-handed on those amazing machines is true credit to all the sailors involved.
One of the other things, talking about numbers, that struck me when I was looking at it was that there was talk at the beginning of the race about whether they would set a new record because they were going to be pushing each other. Of course, as we know, the big disadvantage is that they had to start on a certain date rather than a Jules Verne when you can, or a solo attempt where you can pick your weather. But as you say, Charles Caudrelier finished in 50 days, and I think from memory averaged something like 24.6 knots going around, which is pretty impressive given, going back to Robin talking about Enza, they were really pleased that they'd gone round at an average of 14 knots. So it just added 10 knots on. I thought that was pretty impressive. And then I went and checked up what Francois Gabard has done it when he set the record. He went around the world solo non-stop at an average speed of 27 knots. I still can't get my head around that.
That's incredible. And just think then, with the Jules Verne record as it stands, is 40 days, 23 hours. So that's just that little bit quicker again. But the question now is, will we ever get the weather that allows us to do those laps? You know, these were all a few years ago, and that year that Francis Gabard set the solo record, the same year we had an incredible Vendée lap. You know, the weather's changing, and that year was a phenomenal year where everybody got lots of records and it was all amazing. That was the year to go around the world. Now I think it is getting harder. You know, as much as people are agreeing with climate change or disagreeing with climate change, the weather is changing and we're not having the same conditions out there.
Now, at the other end of the scale, also going on at the time, which is probably under the radar for a lot of people, was the Global Solo Challenge. I hope I've got that round the right way. An incredible performance, an amateur race very much, but an incredible performance certainly by those who've got round, but in particular by Cole Brauer, this young female sailor in a Class 40. Presumably you had your eye on her as well.
Yeah, I actually communicated with her throughout. She spoke to me before, like literally in the summer, and she was leaving in October saying, can you help me? And I was like, it's a little bit late, but you know, I'll give you all the help and support I can. I'll challenge you, I'll ask you the questions to make sure that you're preparing the right things. But yeah, she literally enjoyed every single day from day one, and it goes to show how well she communicated that, because her followers, she ended up with 500,000 followers just from doing a lap of the planet on a pretty old Class 40, and a race she actually finished second in, becoming the first American to sail solo, first American female to sail solo around the world non-stop. But you know, I feel sorry for the Frenchman Philippe that actually finished first, because people don't remember his name, but everyone knows Cole Brauer.
Yeah, it was incredible, and to do it in a Class 40 as well. I know Class 40s have been around the world before, but with stops. I don't think one's ever been around non-stop before.
I mean, and it's an old one. It was an Owen Clark design, was called Dragon. I think some people will recognise that name. It's, you know, performed well. It's got a good pedigree, but it was the boat that she was a boat captain for, so she knew the boat really well. And so she knew every inch of the boat, and so was super confident. And half the battle when you sail solo around the world is having confidence in the boat that you're in and knowing it very well, so that if something goes wrong, you know every inch of her. And that was the advantage that Cole had, which allowed her to be super confident and then just go and find out and learn the rest on the way.
And as you say, she just seemed to thoroughly enjoy it, didn't she? Every clip I saw on social media, she was enjoying telling the story. To say that, I mean, I'm sure there were bits that she didn't enjoy that were pretty tough, but yeah, she came across in a very positive way all the way around. And
actually quite authentic, I'd say, as well. Like when it was bad, she did have the tears, she did have the frustrations. We did see that amazing video clip that I think probably propelled the interest initially, was when the boat broached and she was flung down below from one side of the boat to the other with all the gear tumbling on top of her. And I was just like, the comment was, I hope you've learned to stow everything after that, because I was like, what on earth? But you know, getting that footage is amazing for people to understand that these things happen. And so many of us don't have that press the button or capture that footage or share those incidents. And she did a really good job at, you know, being honest, authentic, and showing what it was like sometimes.
It sounds like we're going to hear quite a lot more of her going forwards.
I think we're definitely going to see her again. She's indicated that 28 Vendée would be ideal, but we all know that, you know, you can have these dreams, but making them a reality is the tricky part, and getting to the start line is always the hard part. So she needs to work hard now, 4 years. We're going to see her Vendée Globe this year. We know there's a little Vendée shuffle after the race where all the boats swap places. So it'll be interesting to see if she's got the finances in place to take advantage of that at the end of the race, and then build up her campaign, her miles, because it's a different league. The Vendée Globe is definitely a different race that she needs to step up into. And I'll obviously help her become aware of that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we wish her well. It sounds great. What are you up to next? Going back out there? Yeah,
at the moment, Limosa, the Mod 70, is still in Antigua, and we're going to be bringing her home. And we're going to bring her home with a 100% female team. So Mod 70's never done an Atlantic crossing with an all-female team. So we thought we'd tick that box off, because obviously our intentions are Jules Verne with a female team. So I'll warm up. So that will be April. And the big news is the 31st of May, we'll see the big boat go in the water. Really? So at the moment, IDEC is out the water in Van, getting work on. And she's going to be all put together by an amazing team, and she'll get her bottom wet on the 31st of May. So that is super exciting.
Oh, I'm going to put that in my diary. Brilliant. As always, thanks so much, Dee.
Pleasure.
In the America's Cup world, the official racing may have stopped for the time being, but the pressure behind the scenes is building as teams prepare to take delivery of their new AC75s. When they splash, each team will have the first indications as to whether the directions and decisions they made many months ago have put them on the right path. In the meantime, teams are now focusing on being in Barcelona full time and getting their heads around the varied and complex conditions that will make this venue especially tricky. So what better a time to head down there myself for a first look. In episode 8 of our regular series on the road to the America's Cup, I head down to Barcelona to find out what's happening on and off the water with an update on what teams have been up to. The series is produced in association with Yanmar, and you can see all of our features so far on the dedicated playlist using the QR code, the link above, or the description below. You can also find all the features on Yanmar's own YouTube channels. While in Spain, I was also invited into the Ineos Britannia base and got to talk to several of their key players. So watch out for the interviews that are coming soon, along with plenty more as we make our way towards the 37th America's Cup. Better still, subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notification bell and we'll keep you up to date. You can get onto our mailing list too by heading to www.planetsail.co.uk. Threading your way through an archipelago for 605 miles while racing flat out has proved to be very popular. The Aegean 600 is a good example, and it's easy to see why. For starters, it's a picturesque course that weaves its way through an area that is steeped in history. The 3,000-year-old Temple of Poseidon overlooks the start and finishing lines, and that's just the beginning of an exceptional scenic tour. But the real attractions for the fleet are the tactical challenges that the course provides and the variety of conditions. It's one of the reasons why more maxis are entering the race and why the Class 40s have expressed serious interest in taking part this year. Both are indications of how and why the standard of racing is improving every season. And then there's the promise of warm weather too. Based at Olympic Marine, the race starts on the 7th of July.
Finishing last year's Rolex Fastnet race was an achievement in itself, but winning by a healthy 2-hour margin was very impressive. As you might expect, Doyle Sails, who supplied the sails to Caro, the winning boat, were pretty pleased too. Caro is an offshore TP52 and owned by Max Klink, who has set out with a big ambition to take on the 3 major ocean classics, the Fastnet, the Middle Sea Race and the Sydney Hobart. Doyle Sails' Justin Ferris project managed the build of the boat, which can be configured for either offshore or inshore racing. On board, he's the watch captain, sail trimmer and helmsman. And back ashore, he continues with Caro's development, which now focuses on the move to Doyle's new hybrid technology. He believes that by changing the entire inventory to hybrid, the team will be able to take 50 kilos off the boat for the same number of sails, something that's unlikely to make her slower. She's 65 metres long and designed by Dykstra, 2 basic facts that make the new super yacht Aquarius 2 stand out from the start. And as Rondal can attest, the engineering to make her a reality is pretty impressive as well. When you see her for real, she is stunning. And to those responsible for delivering the hardware, the anticipated loads were right up there too. In addition, the crew needed to be able to manage a colossal sail plan of more than 4,600 square metres that can be set downwind quickly and efficiently. But having built 3 70-metre plus super yacht rigs in recent years, this was familiar territory for Rondal. Their brand new manufacturing facility includes a giant oven that can cure composite structures at up to 100 degrees C. This allows carbon super yacht masts to be built in one piece, which offers a big weight saving and a reduction in the complexity of a join, which in turn provides one of the key building blocks for this outstanding new super yacht.
One of the ways of getting through the winter is to head to the shows, and for me there are 2 that are essential. Dusseldorf in Germany and Metz, the marine equipment trade show in Amsterdam. Both are huge, Both have more things to see than you could ever achieve in one visit, and both draw me back year after year. If you haven't seen it already, check out my report from Boot Düsseldorf, where I took a look at some of the winners in the European Yacht of the Year, along with several other very interesting boats. But if it's cool kit that floats your boat, here's what caught my eye at Metz.
So this is our new Orbit winch with quick trim. It works in a very similar way to a standard 2-speed winch. Where it differs is when it comes to easing the rope. So rather than taking the rope out of the self-tailer, you grip the drum light on the side, you rotate the top, and you're able to ease the rope straight off the drum without having to take the handle out, without having to take the rope out, and you're straight back into trimming back on again. The other neat feature about this winch is it's totally toolless disassembly. So you can pop the top off, you take the shaft out, bearings off, gears out, you service the whole winch within a matter of minutes. So this drivetrain comes straight from an Anderson winch, so this is all very similar to an Anderson winch. It's all proven, it's been around for a long time. Top in. So thrust ball bearings to take the vertical load, and needle rollers to take the axial load. Put that one on first.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the coolest things I've seen at this show.
That's what we want to hear.
That's amazing.
So inside the quick trim mechanism, we've got a roller that engages with the jaws and locks it. And when we rotate the top self-tailer, the roller falls away, and it allows the self-tailing jaws to rotate backwards, and that's how we ease the rope off the winch without having to turn the drum backwards.
Nice, that's really good, fantastic. And of course, you've won an award for it as well.
Yeah, we picked up the Dame Award for our category, which we're pretty happy about.
Yeah, well done. It's an amazing bit of kit. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Still on the winch theme, Norwegian company Proxdrive was showing a very clever retrofit power-assisted winch system that has a lot in common with an e-bike.
We are measuring the force the user is inputting into the handle, and we're doubling it. So there's no push buttons, and there's no risk of damaging the sails or breaking halyards if you winch too tight, because you feel just like any normal winching. It's like an e-bike, it doubles your input power with sensors in the handle, and we have a special motor that mounts underneath to any winch that has the shaft going through.
This is the motor over here?
Yes, this is the motor, and it's it fits with one simple shaft.
Right. And that mounts, as you say, under the deck?
Under the deck, like any normal electric winch motor.
Right.
Yes. The handle includes an NFC antenna, and inside the winch drum there's an NFC tag with the ID of the motor. So as soon as you insert the handle, it will automatically connect to the winch motor below deck, and then you can start winch as any normal winch.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds, I mean, maybe it's crudely put, but it sounds like a power-assisted winch.
Yes, that's it. It's a power assist, not fully electric. So it's in between manual and fully powered.
Right. So the more effort you put into the handle,
yes,
the more the power matches that.
Yes. So it gives you up to 500 watts of power.
Right.
Yeah. We developed it in the Club's 150 class on board Prox Flyer, the sailboat. And then last season, Early Bird also used it during training regattas and their training. So, yes.
Feels just like a normal winch.
Yes. And then, you can go that way as well, but it's not that hard.
Okay.
And then we can use a normal winch handle.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is actually, yeah, that's really interesting. I suppose as anybody who has got an e-bike will know, the minute you get an e-bike, your friends who haven't got e-bikes just accuse you of cheating all the time. So I guess I'm going to have to be prepared to be accused of cheating all the time. But I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, interestingly, that doesn't feel a particularly short hand.
No.
You don't even think about it, I guess, because it feels so easy to wind the wing. Fantastic.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Thank you.
One of the areas that's been growing very quickly indeed at this show year on year is that of alternative power and propulsion systems, e-power. And among the many things that there were to see at this show, there was one that really caught my eye.
So our name is Phoenix. We are making motor without propeller. We replace the propeller by this membrane you see here. So to understand what we make, we take the inspiration from the swim of a jellyfish. If you see a jellyfish swimming, we are trying to reproduce this movement with the red part you see here. So this red part gonna move like that. We create the ondulation from the periphery to the center. So when you are underwater, the water will entering this way and go out in a straight way. Okay? Really easy, only this movement, and it allows us to propulse small boats, small embarkation. So we have only one size, so it's a 2 kilowatt motors. We work on battery, you can see one here. We have another one here that it's a smaller one. So it's for, like I say, small boats, small embarkation. 2 kilowatts, you can compare it to 4 or 5 horsepower. So we have this product that is on the market, it's available, and we have two sizes of this product. The one you see here have a long leg, and the one you see behind me has a shorter leg. As there is no rotating part, you can put your hand, you will not get hurt. I can show you in video. Here you see the membrane vibrating, and if you can put my hand, it's only vibration.
Amazing.
So for the safety is really nice. Also you get a motor that is really robust. Inside this part we get the magnet, electronic magnet, and they will just move like that. This red part is connected to the electronic membrane and it will move. And the electronic membrane are inside a strong cage. So it's really robust. If you're facing rocks or everything, you can spend 6 hours at medium speed, and at the maximum speed you will spend almost 2 hours. Yeah, so this one is on the market, and we are developing much power with the one behind me. It's going to be 150 horsepower, but for the moment it's in development. It will be on the market next year.
You may remember that we ran a story a while ago about a dog that had got into foiling. I caught up with Arthur Yanai, the co-founder of Level Foils, the company that's created this innovative foiling board. How does this differ from what we saw when we last saw it on the board with Fredo? This looks to be a lot bigger.
Right, so actually this is the exact same underlying infrastructure stability system that you saw with the first foiling puppy that we presented on your show. We even have newer versions coming up, which is a sit on top, fully stabilized kayak, which is pretty cool. And this is exactly the same piece of equipment, to be honest. We are presenting it here in the naked state, just for people to be able to imagine a much more scaled up, larger versions that we have in mind coming up in the future. Here you can see an illustration of a research vessel with solar panel range extenders, also relying on this unique single strut topology that we believe will be the future of motorized electric foiling powerboats.
Because the big difference with yours, just to remind myself,
yeah,
is that you don't have a hand controller with this too. You control it with your pitch fore and aft and side to side.
Right, so with the first type of products that we have, personal self-stabilized and electric foil boards and kayaks, it's true, you're only using your balance in order to control a vessel. In the future, with this type of vessel, you would actually control it remotely. either via satellite communication or RF radio, which is also pretty cool. And with manned versions of powerboats and dinghies, you would actually have a tiller or a joystick, like with a fighter pilot, that would control the attitude of the vessel for you. The cool thing that we have here with the rudder is that when we are controlling the yaw, we are also controlling the roll of the vessel. So they are coupled between each other, right? So when you're cranking the tiller or the joystick from one side to the other, the vessel would first lean or yaw towards the direction that you want to move, and then with controlled banking, you would actually bank into the direction of movement.
What kind of size vessel will this concept go up to, do you think?
So we believe this is feasible up to the 50-foot range scale, yeah. And we definitely see it happening. It would be wise to take it one step at a time. That's why we started with smaller scale personal watercraft, which is, again, the system that you see here in front of you, only without the board, without the dressing. Our next step is going to be, after the kayaks, is going to be probably a 2 or 4-seater. The entire foil package, which means the main wing, the fuselage, the motor, the actuators are all housed in a very tightly dense package underneath the waterline, making for a very minimized drag. And we are hoping to hit the market with the first e-foil, fully stabilized e-foil range in the upcoming summer. That's our expectation.
That's when I should be booking my trip to come and try it.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, I'll stick it in my diary now.
For sure. More than welcome.
As you would expect, the green agenda is big at Metz, and here EcoCube is a really simple yet clever project to help keep our coastlines clean. So, Dinko, this looks like a really interesting project. Tell me a bit about EcoCube.
Well, EcoCube is designed as a floating structure, which will be moored in motorways or in some areas where people like to sail. The idea is to have your tanks emptied and all your garbage. You can dispose solid waste from a vessel. You can connect your wastewater tank and empty it here. We have an 8 cubic meters tank inside, and you can even refill your fresh water because we have a fresh water supply. We have a water maker. So you get rid of all your waste on one place without the need to go to a marina or 12 miles offshore, which is more in Croatia. And then there will be a service vessel. This will all be connected. It will signal the provider that the tanks are full, and the service vessel will come and take the garbage out.
So it's not manned by anybody? There's no staff on board?
No. It's completely unmanned, and it's solar powered with only 2 pumps with 4 hours of sun during the day is enough to power the entire thing for the whole day.
And why was this necessary? What gave you the idea to create this?
Well, it is necessary because the laws forbid emptying in the sea. So and people really lose time because there's a lot of charter in Croatia, and people lose time to go back to a marina to empty the tanks or something, and people who own the boats also. And if they do, there's actually almost a waiting list, to empty your tanks. And so they empty it a lot in areas where they are not supposed to.
Right.
So that's why in Croatia, when you sail and you see 20 vessels anchored at the same place, you will anchor also because it's nice, but it's not advisable to go swimming in that area. So this is the solution to that problem. It's cleaning up the sea from waste.
And do you see this as being something that goes beyond Croatia? Are you looking to market this around the world?
Yes, definitely. We already have some interest from Greece, Norway also, which are
good stuff. Very interesting project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Another of my favourite shows at this time of year is the RYA Dinghy and Water Sports Show, held at a venue better known for its air shows, Farnborough. You can see our report on this by following the link or by using the QR code.
HH Cats have just launched another new cat, and they say the new baby of their range is a sign of what's to come. The HH44 was designed to combine luxury with performance, and with 37 sold already, the message seems to have got through. She's good looking for starters, and with her curved dagger boards, the sports cruising version hints of what she's capable of underway. To HH Cats, performance is as much about good sailing characteristics in light winds as it is about ease of handling when the going gets more boisterous. Her vacuum-infused epoxy laminate construction utilises carbon in high load areas to create an overall structure that is stiff and light. She's an interesting boat below decks too, from silent running air conditioning to ample berths with quality sprung mattresses and a dedicated workshop. This is a cat that takes long distance cruising seriously.
As any owner knows, boat ownership is about more than simply choosing the right boat with the right equipment. Yacht Match know this too. Which is why, when it came to thinking about what it takes to run a boat and a competitive racing campaign, Yacht Match decided to create a service to help. Their technical team consists of experts in ORC and IRC regulations. They can help train crew and refine manoeuvres, as well as optimising sails, appendages and the overall boat setup. Their service package includes a dedicated race team manager, responsible for event logistics, crew coordination and support during racing events. They're also the dealers for Arkea Yachts, who, following early racing successes with their 1198 and 998 models, are now about to launch their first race optimised model, the 1298. Given the yard's track record in ORC, she looks set to attract plenty of attention this season. It's the middle of February and we're just coming towards the end of the boat show season. Something that my friend and co-journalist here, Mark Jardine, knows very well. We've been to quite a few boat shows over the years, and we've certainly been to quite a few in the last few months. But one of the most important shows of the season, at least for us, is the Marine Equipment Trade Show. There are always all kinds of announcements by clothing manufacturers, and again, we've been to quite a few of those. It has to be said that they're not always the most exciting or revealing things. Not always do the products stand up to the hype. It's also true that in recent years, the clothing manufacturers seem to have lost their way a bit. And in fact, I'd say Henri Lloyd are probably a little bit guilty of that too. But when we went to see them, they seemed to have something else to say, didn't they?
It was interesting. They launched a new collection, but it very much felt like they were drawing on all of the heritage over that past 60 years, but using modern technologies.
Yeah, so we thought, why don't we come down and see it in a bit more detail? They said, come and do it. So here we are in Lymington at their store, and we're going to get the lowdown on the latest range.
How are you?
Oh, good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Matt.
Hi,
welcome.
Ross. Yeah, good to see you.
Come on in.
Thank you.
I thought we'd start with Elite. Now, you might have heard that name from us before, and you'd be right, you have. But we have completely redesigned Elite for 2024. It's feature-packed, as you would hope from an offshore jacket, and be mindful that it does come in a dry top, a high fit, all in black as well, and in a male and female.
Now, whilst Mark is getting the detail on the new collection, I thought I'd find out a bit more about what lies behind the big changes at Henri Lloyd. And to do that, I thought I'd call up Knut Frostad. Yeah, the guy from the Volvo Ocean Race and Navico. I was surprised too. Knut, great to see you. We thought we'd have a quick chat with you because obviously there's been a lot going on at Henri Lloyd, which I want to talk about the background of that in a minute. But just quickly, how come you're here now?
For me, Henri Lloyd is a brand I grew up with. I aspired to, my hero when I started, Laurie Smith, was an ambassador. You know, I kind of grew up with that brand, leading the offshore sailing world. And now I have a chance to bring it back to the market together with a fantastic team. And it's sailing 3.0 for me. so great to be back. And I'm now going to be full-time involved as well, which is fairly recent. And that's something I'm truly looking forward to.
Now, tell me a bit about the background to what's been going on at Henri Lloyd, because over the last few years, there's been quite a lot of things that have changed and maybe people aren't aware of. So just fill us in on that.
Well, long story short is that Monte Rosa Sport, which is the group I'm part of, is a new group, sports brand group, that is really driven by investors who are super passionate about sport, mainly outdoors and sailing. That's the two things we do. And the same group has been involved with Helly Hansen before. We've been involved with Navico, and now we're doing it ourselves. And this is really our baby. We acquired a brand very recently, 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, and really sort of have very exciting, ambitious plans for the brand, bringing it back to the market. But we're also going back to its roots, which is really the offshore sailing world, where there's no tougher testing place for sailing apparel. That's where, you know, if you can work there, you can work everywhere. And then we're going to obviously make that applicable for everyone who sails in their clubs locally, and to have great sailing gear that they really love wearing. And it's very exciting.
Sailing has changed beyond recognition, some would argue, particularly offshore sailing. How applicable? I mean, you say you want to go back to its roots, but how applicable is it?
Well, back to the roots. If I look at Henri Lloyd was really a big innovator in this space. So good old Henri, who drove the brand. He was the first to really get taped seams working, and he was constantly innovating the product. So back to its root doesn't mean making old gear. It means being back to that, being the innovator in the space, in the industry, who comes up with the right gear for the right time. And also the new innovations that's going to drive us forward. Still, despite the fact that we are foiling and flying and all these things today, it's still raining and it's still bad weather, and we still love bad weather when we're sailors, if not, you'll never become one. Whether you are being rained on and sprayed on a flying boat, or a keel boat, or a dinghy, or a heavy old wooden boat, a lot of the needs are the same. And they haven't changed that much, but technology have changed, materials have changed, the fitness have changed, more women are in the sport of sailing. All of that is different than it was in the old days, very different today, and that's also exciting.
Now, you mentioned that the Monte Rosa group is an important part of this, it's an important part of this new story, but it also includes other brands, and I just wonder how important that is. Can you draw from the experience of some of the other companies in the group?
Yes, so in the Monte Rosa group we have two other brands. We have Odlo, which is a Swiss-Norwegian brand. They are rock stars at base layers, so everything you wear on your skin, they're absolutely the best in the market. And then we have Janus, which also do base layers, but wool. They are everything about wool. They're the wool specialist in the group. And we have already started drawing on their expertise to make a great new collection of base layers for Henri Lloyd. I think the base layers we have developed with Odlo are going to be amazing.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for taking the time to just fill us in on that. I'll let you get back to running the company.
Thank you so much, Matt. Cheers. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Meanwhile, Mark was being shown what this meant for the new collection. And it was the detail that caught his eye, where the Elite range was a good example of how the company is combining their long experience with modern techniques and technology.
You can see it's taped all the way through, and we are more generous than most with our taping and ensuring there is a huge amount of crossover per tape cut as well. That's where the value in a product really comes through. We've then got a full fleece protection, but it's perforated to improve airflow, but also, more importantly, drying time. This is designed to get hosed, and if it does get hosed, you need it to dry quickly. That's why it's also not lined with mesh. It's a true offshore shell. Your warmth and insulation comes from your base and your mid layers. Therefore, this needs to be unlined from a weight perspective and also from a drying perspective. Because if the worst happens and you're in a squall and you're completely soaked, this will dry quickly as well.
Hence the layering, not one big thick thing.
Hence the layering. Another great feature is each pocket outline has a reflective detail on its taping. This is one of my favourite features that the design team have put into this product. We discussed a lot about how to finish edges on product, and in low light situations you can then easily access each pocket because you can see it. You're not guessing, particularly on a black product in a night sky as well. So Elite High Fit, our design team have actually taken inspiration, believe it or not, from rucksacks and backpacks. You'll notice the padding and comfort here in the High Fit straps are, in my mind, better than most, and also have a huge amount of elasticity, because that's where the weight will be carried on your shoulders. And so a deep perforated material increases airflow, but also there's a thickness to it, so there is comfort on the top of your shoulders. Since we've been producing offshore kit out of our factory in Poland, our Elite range has gone through over 1 million miles of testing over the last 25 years. And so it's these evolutional changes that we put into the product, as well as recutting seams for better articulation and, again, increasing that comfort for the user at the end of the day if they're in it for hours and hours at a time. This kit's designed to be worn 2 weeks at a time, non-stop if need be. And so reinforcement points are absolutely key. That's why not just the heel of the high fit end, but the complete circumference of the bottom of the high fit is covered with an oversized Caudrelier reinforcement point. So as you're crawling, scraping around on deck and just getting in and out of boots and everything, you've got longevity in the product because it's not going to wear quickly when that is the point closest to the ground. So the Biscay jacket, a competent coastal and offshore piece in a male and female cut. We've kept the collar height generous, so it still sits up around the back of your head and just underneath your ears. So when you're in it, you do feel completely enclosed and protected. We've split the Velcro for quick entry, and you'll notice even on the inside of the double storm flap, we've added a drainage channel.
This looks like a real multi-purpose jacket.
The sail jacket, we've redesigned this to do what it used to do as well. A complete 365 days of the year jacket. If you're a powerboater, yachtsman, it's a tape-seamed 2-layer waterproof, windproof jacket with a mesh and taffeta lining. So a really good AquaGuard zip along the chest and in the pockets, therefore reducing the need for a storm flap, therefore opening the jacket up and allowing it to be used in multiple areas.
I can't help noticing as I get older, I do get a little bit of a belly, but I went and looked in the mirror in this, I thought...
That is a belly reducing jacket.
I feel a bit better now.
The Breeze, mid-height collar, mesh and taffeta lined, waterproof, windproof fabric, but the key thing is we have taped the seams on these jackets as well. So our entire range is waterproof and windproof from what is our deck jacket. And not only do I see this as a deck jacket, but it's your everyday jacket as well. It's your boat to bar jacket, maybe to bed jacket as well, who knows? But I just think the Breeze range was a winner for decades in the past, then using today's fabrics, which are PFC free as well. So we're ahead of legislation there. We've got a highly competent layering piece.
That was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
They've got a lot going on, that's for sure. Well, we've got to go and try it, haven't we? That's the thing.
We've got to go for a sail.
Yeah, well, no problem with that. But I tell you what about, you've got loads of Henri Lloyd kit, and I've got shed loads of it as well. Why don't we use that as the datum for this kit? Because they're talking about this representing the values of the old kit. If we just take our kit down there and show them that, and then test it against that.
You're on. Let's go.
Let's do it. My car's full of the stuff.
I've got a whole load in the garage.
As always, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. It's free. and tick the notification bell so that you know when we've posted new content. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and of course our website. Stay safe, stay well, until next time.